Hello everyone, my name is Dan Williamson and welcome to my kitchen. I've been on the community kitchen board for a little over 11 years and I've been involved with the brunches since the very beginning. During this pandemic, we've decided to do an online tutorial so that you can create your own brunch since we can't gather and do them together. Today I'm making a Torta Borracha, which is a drunken cake. For dessert for this brunch so that you can make it with your family and enjoy. Okay, so we have our ingredients for this cake. We're going to need some eggs for the cake, some flour, some sugar, baking powder, a little salt, vanilla, and butter. For the syrup that's going to be poured over the cake, we just need some sugar and rum and some water. And then we're going to make a chocolate bark with some ancho chili flakes. I have New Mexican red chilies here that are flaked, but any pepper flakes that you like work well. And then we just have some regular chocolate chips that I found in my cupboard. Okay, to get started, we're going to grease and flour our pan. We're going to preheat the oven to 375. And then I'm going to separate the eggs and measure out all the dry ingredients for you. And then we're going to come back and show you how to actually put it all together. Okay, we're ready to go on this now. I've melted the butter first so that it has a chance to cool back to room temperature because we don't want to drizzle hot butter into our aerated mixture because it'll just flatten it. So that's why I did the butter first in that previous segment. Now we're going to whip the egg whites. So I have my 4 egg whites in here, and we're going to slowly add the 4 tablespoons of sugar that we held out of our half a cup. The rest we put into the yolks. So while the egg whites are beating, we're going to add a little bit of sugar at a time until the egg whites are stiff, and when you pull the, I'll show you when you pull the whip out, it'll make a stiff peak. Meanwhile, we're gonna whip the eggs until they're kind of a light yellow, and that'll have the eggs, the yolks incorporated with the sugar really well before we get started here. So. You can see that the eggs are pretty yellow, pretty dark yellow right now, and we'll see what they look like after we've beat them for a minute or two. It's best to have your egg whites at room temperature if you can, so if you can leave the whites out for a half hour before you whip them, just makes them come up a little bit better. Okay, now you can see how sort of light yellow they've gotten. Now they're creamed together with the sugar really nicely. And you can see that our egg whites are starting to get some peaks as we whip air into them. Now you can see how they are stiff with air and they actually won't come out of the whip very easily. So I think we've got a good amount there. Now it's time to incorporate the egg yolks into the whites by folding them. The idea here is that you don't want to lose the air that's whipped into the eggs because that's going to give your torte a sort of lighter feel, and also make enough air in there that our rum syrup can soak into the cake after we get it out of the oven. So we're just going to kind of fold this together here. Okay, now that we have the egg yolks and sugar kind of incorporated in there, we're going to start to incorporate the flour mixture in, the dry goods as well. So we'll add a little bit of those, about half, and we'll fold that together. And the rest of them. So once you have that incorporated, then that's basically your batter. We're going to drizzle the butter and the vanilla into this as well. And so we're going to just estimate about a teaspoon of vanilla here. And then our butter. And that's your cake batter. So now we put this into the floured pan. And we set that in the oven to bake for about 30 minutes or until it's just kind of lightly brown on top. Okay, so now we're going to make the rum syrup that gets poured over the cake. So we're going to add 2 cups of sugar and 2 cups of water, and we're going to set that to boil. And then we're just going to simmer that until the temperature reaches 235, which is the softball stage. If you don't have a thermometer that goes up that high, you can just drop a little bit of the syrup into water, and it should be kind of soft in there, and that's why they call it softball. And then once that's done, we're going to take it off the stove. We're going to add our rum, and then that's going to make our syrup that we're going to pour over the cake once it comes out of the oven. Once we complete that, then we'll work on the bark with the pepper flakes for the garnish. Okay, so we're just about there on the syrup, so you can see how it's starting to thicken up and not be so watery. We're going to just wait another minute here, and then we're going to drop a little bit in that water because my thermometer only goes to 220, so we're kind of guesstimating on the 235. But I think we'll be there here shortly, and then we'll put a little in there and we'll see what it looks like in terms of the softball. So you can see both ways how to do it. And then once that happens, we're going to take it off the heat, and we're going to add our rum, which we've already measured out, a half a cup. You could use sherry, you could use bourbon, you could use whatever kind of alcohol you have. It doesn't have to be rum. And then once the cake comes out of the oven, we're going to poke some holes in it with a skewer or some other kind of small round instrument. We'll poke the holes in the cake. That way the rum syrup can soak in there and get all in the cake. And then we'll make our bark and we'll be ready to go. So let's test this to see how it looks. We're just going to take a little bit in a spoon here and drop it in some cold water. All right. You can see it in there. Now we're going to just check it out. So yeah, it's ready to go. It's a little bit brittle, so maybe we're just slightly past 235, but that's okay. So we're going to take it off the heat. And we're just going to whisk in this rum. And there you have a nice syrup to go on top of the cake. Okay, our cake is nice and brown. So we're going to take it out of the oven. And our syrup is still warm and a little bit bubbly. So we're going to just poke some holes in this cake so that all that good syrup filters down into the sponginess of the cake. And then we're just going to pour the syrup over it. Okay, now we'll get ready to make our chocolate bark. Okay, we're back and we're getting ready to make the bark, which is going to be our garnish for our cake. So as you can see over here, I've got a just a regular cookie sheet lined with some wax paper. And then I've made a double boiler to melt the chocolate. So I have the chocolate, about 2 cups of chocolate, but you can do more or less. We really only need 4 pieces of bark, but sometimes bark's just good to have around to munch on. So, you know, make as much as you want. I put about half a teaspoon of the red chili flakes in there just for flavoring. And then once we get the bark smoothed out, we'll put a little bit of flakes over the top for just for looks. So you can see that my double boiler is going and the chocolate's starting to melt in there with the chili flakes in it. Some people like to do microwave for their chocolate. That's fine if you have luck with that. I would do 10 seconds at a time until it's melted. I'm not a big fan of that because sometimes it makes the chocolate weird. So I just prefer to set up a double boiler, which is pretty simple. So once this gets all the way melted here, we're just going to smooth it out onto our parchment paper. I'm going to get a spatula for that rather than a spoon because it'll make it easier to smooth out. Okay, looks like we're pretty well melted here. So I'm going to go ahead and shut off my water, and then we'll just grab the bowl here and move it over. And there's no real magic here. It doesn't have to be any particular shape. If you get it too thick, it's a little bit harder to cut. I like to just smooth it out, make it nice and thin. And then we'll, whoa, my wax paper is not cooperating. Okay, now I'm going to just take a few more flakes of the pepper and we're just going to sprinkle them on. And then right into the refrigerator to cool. Okay, we're back. So we have our chocolate bark, which is now nice and cold. You can see it's stiff there. We've cut a piece of our rum-soaked cake out, which we're going to just put on our plate there. And then we're going to cut our bark. It doesn't matter how you cut it, whatever way you fancy. We'll just peel it off there. And then we're just going to take some pieces of bark and we're going to just set them in our cake. Ooh, that one's, let's try this piece. You may have to just make a little slice in there so your bark can just slide in. There we go. And you can use as much or as little as you like, it doesn't really matter. And then I like to put a little bit of lavender flowers around for garnish. And there you have your Torta Borracha. Bon appetit.